This video, we're going to talk about 1.3 Objective 4, where we identify and remediate sources of confounding in an experiment. Let's look at example 1 here. An experiment is designed to evaluate the effectiveness of pesticide and fertilizer on popular tree health. Pesticides are used with one group of 56 poplar trees in a moist region, and fertilizer is used with 54 poplar trees in a dry region. The researchers doing the measurements of the tree health are aware of which trees receive pesticide and which trees receive fertilizer. Identify any problems that are likely to cause confounding and explain how the problems can be avoided. So let's just go one by one here and see if these things could cause confounding. Option A says there's likely to be a placebo effect in the study because the subjects know whether they are receiving pesticide or fertilizer. Well, neither of the things here, pesticide or fertilizer, are placebos. They're both treatments of different kind. So that's not the correct answer. So there's likely to be some confounding in the study because the researchers making the tree measurements will be influenced by knowing which trees are receiving pesticide and which are receiving fertilizer. So that's an option right there because there's no control group and there's no blinding in the study. If there are differences in the health of the trees, there's no way to know if the differences are attributable to the treatments, the pesticide or fertilizer, or the type of region, dry or moist, because all of the trees in the moist region received the pesticide and all of the ones in the dry region received the fertilizer. So there would be some confounding that would be there. So there, I already mentioned D, that there's no control group, and that could be a problem. And then the last option here says the groups are so small that confounding is likely to be introduced by the selection of the group subjects. No, that's not a problem here. So let's move on to the next question here. Explain how the problems could be avoided and select all that apply. So the first option here is the researchers doing the tree measurements should not be aware of which trees are receiving pesticides and which are receiving fertilizer. Right, there should be some blinding there. So that's what that's saying. B says differences in health of trees can be correctly attributed to pesticides, fertilizer, and region by using blocks of trees that receive pesticides and blocks of trees that receive fertilizer in both the moist and dry regions. That's true. So we should mix it up a little bit and not have all pesticide in the moist region and all fertilizer in the dry region. We should get some trees in the moist region that get fertilizer, some that get pesticide, and some in the dry region that get fertilizer, and some that get pesticide. C says the study's subjects should not be aware whether they receive pesticide or fertilizer. Well, the subjects are trees, so they're not, that doesn't matter, right? So the size of the group should be increased to eliminate the possibility of a biased sample. No, we're taking a survey, so that doesn't matter, right? Everybody, we're not going and taking a sample after we're done. So this is not what's going on. To isolate the effects of pesticide and fertilizer, the researchers should add a control group of trees that does not receive pesticide or fertilizer. That would be a good idea too, to have a control group that's not there. And the last one says either none of these methods could be used to avoid any problems, or there were no problems to avoid. That's not true. We found problems and we found solutions. So let's go on here to question number 2. and it says in a comparison of gasoline with different octane ratings, 25 limousines are driven with 87 octane gasoline, while 34 vans are driven with 91 octane gasoline. After being driven for 100 miles, each vehicle is rated on the quality of performance. The researchers doing the performance quality ratings are aware of which vehicles receive 87 octane gasoline and which receive 91 octane gasoline. Identify any problems that are likely to cause confounding and explain how the problems could be avoided. So let's look at this. The groups are so small that confounding is likely to be introduced by the selection. The group subjects, no, that's not true. There's likely to be some confounding in the study because the researchers making the performance quality ratings will be influenced by knowing which vehicles received 87 octane gasoline and which vehicles received 91 octane gasoline. That's possible. There is no blinding, so that's a problem. There's likely to be a placebo effect in the study because the subjects know whether they are receiving 87 or 91 octane. No, there's no placebo here. Everyone's in experiment or treatment group. If there are differences in the amount of performance or quality, there is no way to know the differences are attributable to the treatments, the 87 or 91 octane gasoline, or the type of vehicle, limousine, or van. That's true. So now let's explain how the problems could be avoided. First option here is the researchers doing the performance quality ratings should not be aware of which vehicles receive 87 octane and which vehicles receive 91 octane. That's true. We should have some blinding. Study subjects should not be aware whether they receive synthetic oil or conventional oil. That doesn't make a difference. We're not studying the oil. We're talking about gasoline here. Differences in the performance quality ratings can be correctly attributed to octane level by using 87 octane gasoline in half of the limousines and half of the vans, and by using 91 octane gasoline in the other vehicles. That's true. The size of the group should be increased to eliminate the possibility of a biased sample. No, we're fine there. So, then the other question that says either there were no problems or none of the solutions are correct. That's not true because we found problems and we found solutions. All right, let's go on to our third question here. And it says, a journal included a report of a study that was conducted to determine whether people have different spending characteristics depending on whether they have a $1 bill or 4 quarters. The subjects were given a choice, keeping the money or spending it on gum or mints. Among the 49 subjects given the $1 bill, 17 spent the money. Among 41 subjects given 4 quarters, 34 spent the money. The researchers running the experiment are aware of which participants received the $1 bill and which received 4 quarters. Determine whether confounding is likely to occur, and if so, identify any problems that are likely to cause confounding. Explain how the problems could be avoided. So let's again go one by one here. Option A says there's likely confounding because the evaluators knew who received the $1 bill and who received the 4 quarters. That's actually not a problem here. There's really no way to get any blinding in this because the people who receive the money are going to know which they received, right? So there's really no need to have any blinding here because everybody is making a choice here about this and is aware of which group they're in. There's no need to try and hide that information. There is no control group, but that's not really needed in this situation because we're not doing something where it would make sense to give people no money, right? That's not what we're doing. We're just seeing if there's a difference if they have 4 quarters versus a dollar's bill. So there's not going to be a control group here. There is an experiment on both sides, but there's really no need for a control group here. So C says confounding is not likely to occur. Evaluators do not affect how the money was used and applied no subjective judgment in identifying how it was used. Right. That's it. And that's, I mean, that kind of answers it. I'm not going to check any of the other ones, but I'll go through the other ones and explain them too. Since the sample size was small, there was likely confounding between the two groups. No, there wasn't. It was very clear, who was in which group, and there were no other factors there other than their free choice about whether they wanted a $1 bill or 4 quarters and whether they wanted to buy the gum and mints or not. So there is likely a placebo effect in the study because the subjects know whether or not they're receiving treatment. No, there's no placebo in this. Everybody's getting a treatment. So there's no placebo effect here. So given that C says that there was no confounding, that there were no problems, we're going to jump right to E, which says that none of these methods we don't need to find any fixes to any problems because there were no problems, and we'll just go on from there. So we don't need to remove a placebo effect. We don't need to add a control group. We don't need to increase the sample size, and we don't need to use blinding in this example, right? Then last question for this objective in a test of the effects of eating a vegetarian diet on blood pressure. One group of 53 randomly selected subjects undergoes a treatment consisting of a vegetarian diet, while another group of 56 randomly selected subjects eats a non-vegetarian diet. And you're probably going to know which is which is important there because people are going to know who's getting the vegetarian diet, who's not. That's going to be hard to hide, right? Researchers doing the measurement of the blood pressure are aware of which participants received the treatment and which did not, to determine whether confounding is likely to occur, and if so, identify any problems that are likely to cause confounding and explain how the problems could be avoided. So don't worry about the size of the groups. That's not something that's going to cause confounding. If there are differences in the blood pressure, can we know that it's attributable to the treatment, the eating of the vegetarian diet, or the height of the participants? There's nothing here saying that you gave taller people one or the other. So we had a good mixture of people. So that's not it. So the only factor that we changed between the two groups of people was their diet, and everything else stayed the same. So there is likely to be an experimenter effect in the study because the researchers making the blood pressure measurements will influence the subjects by knowing which participants eat a vegetarian diet and which do not. That's possible because there's no blinding here. Is there likely to be a placebo effect in the study because the subjects know whether they're eating vegetarian or non-vegetarian diet? Yes. That's one of the things that I mentioned before. And while there's not a control group here of people who just kept their diet the same, that wouldn't really be helpful here. So that's okay that there's not a control group. We have the vegetarian and non-vegetarian diet. So that's enough. and explain how the problems could be avoided. So differences in the measurements of blood pressure can be correctly attributed to eating vegetarian by giving vegetarian diet treatments to half of the, it doesn't have anything to do with height. So don't worry about A. It doesn't have to do with who's tall and who's short. The size of the group should be increased. No, that's fine. The researchers doing the blood pressure measurement should not be aware of the participants, which participants eat vegetarian diet and which eat a non-vegetarian diet. That's it. That's called blinding. We should be doing that. The study subjects should not be aware of whether they receive a vegetarian diet treatment or not. That's impossible. Basically, they're going to know what they're eating. Unfortunately, there's no way to eliminate the placebo effect in the study. That's right. We can't, because people are going to know what kind of food they're eating. And we know that F is not true because we found problems and solutions. All right, so that's it for this topic. We'll come back next time and talk about 1.3, Objective 5. See you for the next video.